Do you know anybody with breast implants? And did you know that there's an illness related to breast implants? This is a new discovery for me. I was at an event at Atlanta recently, and I met an amazing speaker, and she's going to be a guest today. And I wanted to welcome her onto the show. I have her bio here. Her name is Laura Bowden, and a real champion for the women out there and for the men too, as spouses, letting people know about what's really happening in their bodies despite being told that these breast implants are safe. Unbelievable show. I think you guys are really going to enjoy it. Here's her short bio. Laura is a breast implant illness survivor since 1992 and a bit of a pioneer. Yes, I agree with this. Her goal is to educate and prevent future generations that are suffering from this injustice and help guide others who have been affected. In 1995, she appeared on the Oprah Winfrey Show, Jenny Jones, and local Chicago news to advocate for women's health and wellness. She had the honor to speak in front of the FDA regarding the dangers of breast implants with 80 incredible advocates in March of 2019. When Laura is not working, she enjoys spending time with her family, which includes 11 grandchildren and friends. And we'll put the clips from those shows here, Laura, because it was so fantastic to see you speaking truth and to see how the time has passed, almost 25 years, since the first recording to the second recording, and now it's almost 30 years. So welcome to the show, Laura. Very excited to have this conversation. And yeah, it's a joy to be with you. Thanks for being on the show.
Well, thank you for having me. It means a lot. It's so important that we get this information out to the public and the medical community, so these women can be helped, or we can save the next generation from these breast implants that have never been proven safe.
Yes, yes. And we were just speaking earlier how it's related somewhat to the jab business, which is they tell you that it's safe and no problems, and then you have some sickness and some illness, and it's not the thing that you injected into your body, or in your case, the device that you put in your body. It's in your head. And I can see how frustrating that would be when we're intuitive beings, I believe, and we feel, yeah, if I got some implants and from a woman's perspective, and I feel ill, and maybe you can share with your story. I think you got the implants in 1990 and you were sick very short after. Why don't you share your short story, and you can share about the support groups that you have and kind of what's been going on, because a lot of women are getting breast implants these days. And I'm curious about the numbers or the impacts, but starting with your personal story, I think be a good place to start.
Absolutely. I'll give you the short version. 26 years old, perfectly healthy, 3 little boys, happily married. And for me personally, it was a 2-week decision. My neighbor had them. She's like, hey, I got implants. I'm like, oh, those are cool. And that's how quick it happened. Wanted the ear put back in them. It's important to mention that the majority of women that get these breast implants are moms. Nursing moms that just wanted the ear put back in them. It's not like, it doesn't discriminate. It could be, your next door neighbor who nobody really knows that she has them. So that it's important to mention, because I think everybody thinks it's just the movie stars that have them. No, it's, everyday, beautiful, strong, healthy housewives got them. Actually, husband was against it, a little TMI, but he's a butt guy. He's not a boob guy. Yes, I said it. So he didn't want me to do it. And he came with me to the doctor, totally safe. You could be 8 feet under the ground and your breast will still be standing, which is kind of true, I guess. Got them. Let's fast forward. Within 4 months, the fatigue started, which was not like me. I was an aerobics instructor, kept up with my 3 little boys. So in a 2-year period, it became brain fog, word retrieval, dry eyes, 30 pounds of inflammation, heart palpitations, IBS issues, rashes, an overall feeling of just not being able to get out of bed. Every doctor you can imagine. They actually sent me to a psychiatrist. How's your marriage? Well, you do have little kids, 26 years old. So between 26 and 28, I went to every doctor you can imagine with no answers. The interesting thing about breast implant illness, it's not like you can put it in a drawer. There's no firm diagnosis. Maybe things are a little off, but not enough to say, hey, this is what you have. And back then, in 1990, we didn't have social media, so this would have never popped up on my radar ever. How did I know? My God-given gut. My God-given gut. I woke up one day and I thought, what is different in my life? And I thought, I got breast implants. I mean, it was kind of a no-brainer for me. And I was taking 6 Motrin 800s a day just to get out of bed. And I decided not to take anything that day. I went back to my plastic surgeon because he'll tell me the truth, right? Is what I thought. I went back to my surgeon and I'm sitting there and I wasn't being hysterical. And I just said, I'm very sick. If it's from my breast implants, please tell me. And he tapped me on the knee. Now, now, now. There's no scientific data to this day to show that why you're sick, but I'll take them out under a local if that's what you want me to do. I said, get them out of me. I was 1 week away from him removing my silicone breast implants under a local, which we now know is not possible. And I was at my grandma's, and Jenny Jones, for the younger generation, she's kind of like the generic Oprah. That's the only way to describe it, right?
Yeah.
And Jenny Jones was talking about being sick from her breast implants, and she was describing every single symptom I had. And underneath the TV, there's scrolled a support group. And I wrote down the number of the woman. Her name was Vicky. And I called her at 9 o'clock at night, and she was my lifeline. She saved my life. She said, if you go back to that man, he will kill you. So I found out about a neurologist doing a study at Baylor University in Texas. We took $10,000 out of my husband's 401k because we needed that to just walk into the hospital because insurance doesn't acknowledge this illness. We did it for cosmetic reasons. And there is where I met 3 floors of very, very sick women from their breast implants. And I chose this neurologist because he was doing a study. And at the time, it was called silicone adjuvant breast disease. And at the time of being there, I realized all these women were there for the exact same reason. And they had been sick for years, ruptures after ruptures. What have you done? You did it to yourself. Some women were homeless. Many had been divorced. Their husbands left them after they got sick. So I was under his care for 2 weeks. And literally by the grace of God, there was an incredible surgeon he worked with there named Dr. Hamilton. He removed my breast implants. And within 24 hours, it was like somebody flipped a switch. Every single symptom I had was gone. It was like the cloud left my brain. And Dr. Patton, which was his name, he's 82 now, said, you are one of the lucky ones. You were young, you were healthy, and they were not ruptured. It's like taking logs off the fire. So at that time, I literally within 24 hours got my life back. It happened that quickly. And I went to every room of those women that I had made friends in the last 2 weeks, and I made them a promise. I promised them that I would come back to Illinois and I would be their voice. So that's what we did. My husband and I came back and we started a support group, and we put a little ad in the newspaper before social media, and women came from underground. The support group just grew and grew and grew. So I ended up being on the Jenny Jones show 3 times. She actually bought me a fax machine and had me be the support person. Remember fax machine? We had fax machines and Rolodexes. That's what we had.
Yeah.
And I became the contact person for all the women that contacted her show that were so sick. So 4 years I ate and breathed. Just like the woman that saved my life, I had hoped that I could do the same for others. So that was for 4 years of my life. Conferences, this is the amazing thing. When they say there's no studies and no science, there is. It is being hidden. It's been hidden for decades. Does that sound familiar? Right?
Yes.
So my husband and I would go travel all over to conferences of good doctors and scientists that were showing their studies. We had the studies, and we would bring the documentation home for our support group, and the women just couldn't get enough of this information. And so I did that for 4 years. And this is a part where I used to be embarrassed saying this, but now I understand why God spared me. So I truly believe there was a time I had to walk away, and I had to walk away because it was consuming my life. I had 3 little boys at the time, and it's a lot. It's emotionally a lot to be an advocate and be a support system. And this is my thinking on this. I believe God put me in a time capsule, threw me out to the ocean. And 5 years ago, somebody found me on the ocean. Her name was Latasha, and she opened up that time capsule, and I came back out again. There's just no other way to explain it. I met a woman, I'm a CrossFitter, and I met her at my gym, and she was sick from her implants. I could see it in her eyes. And I knew at that moment, holy moly, women are still sick. So when I say I've been doing this for so long, I truly believe God spared me, because there's no way with the intensity that I was involved in this back then. I think he said, okay, I'm going to give you a break.
Yeah.
I'm going to bring you out, and you're going to join these incredible advocates that have been speaking for years.
Yeah.
Because nobody even knew it existed. Nobody even knew that this existed 30 years ago, that we were screaming from the mountains, right? So, come on. Hold on 1 second.
Yes.
I have the pleasure, if we want to pause, Dr. Pryor is going to give us a couple minutes and I will not forget where we were at. So I don't know if you
Yeah.
want to pause and bring him in. It's completely up to you.
No. Yeah, let's bring him in. This is great time. Sure.
Yeah, you're good.
And maybe you can give him an
Surgery.
introduction a little bit, or hello, Dr. Pryor.
Hello. Just when I'm
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Oh, it's actually going to be a podcast.
podcast.
Yeah.
Okay. Hello, how are you?
Awesome, sir. How about yourself?
Doing great, thank you.
So we were talking a little bit about history and how I've gotten to where I'm at right now. And I did tell him a little bit about where you stand on this, with you believing this, this community, which is not easy to do. And kind of ask your questions, David, as
Sure.
far as what you
Yes, absolutely. So Laura has been exposing the illness related to breast implants, and I just learned about this in the last month or so, and I didn't realize it was so severe. And she has, yeah, great things to say about you, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on the breast implant illness and what you think the audience should know. Just learning about this in the very beginning, and we can start there.
Sure, just out of curiosity, like who generally is the listener, the audience for your show?
I have a show called Voluntary Living, and it's building a world based on consent, self ownership, and freedom, which is empowering individuals. I'm in the education world. I'm a principal. I do early high school graduations, and I focus on voluntary learning and, of course, voluntary living. So, in that aspect, we believe in self ownership. So, you can do whatever body modifications that you like. However, it seems that the studies are cooked and they're lying or they're hiding them, as you said, Laura. So we just want to shine some light on this area where people are getting sick and they want to have the good aesthetics and good body, but the science is lying to them because there's big money involved, it seems. And it seems women should get these implants removed. Maybe is there any case where implants aren't sick causing or illness causing, or like they're healthy? I mean, it doesn't seem like that could be the case, but I'll be curious to know what your thoughts are, and yeah, what people should know that are maybe thinking about getting breast implants, have breast implants, and maybe just kind of an overall high level look from the doctor's perspective.
Sure, yeah. I'm not really big into pointing fingers and saying, who's kind of promoting what for what particular self-interest or lack thereof, and you know, who's kind of pulling the strings and kind of controlling the decisions that are being made related to breast implants and the research. That's all going on in the background, and that's nothing that I or anybody else really have control over. But I think what will resonate with your listeners, and obviously as a physician and as a surgeon, we took a Hippocratic oath, above all to do no harm. And I think
Right.
an important component of that is, to your point and to your your credibility and really your philosophy is, making an informed decision and
Yeah.
informed consent. And that, of course, isn't just limited to school choice, which is obviously very pertinent to what you do, but obviously in healthcare, it's critically important because our patients don't have the background or the information that we as providers do to be making informed decisions based on scientific recommendations that we know. So, I think that extends to breast implants as well as all aspects, especially of medicine, and surgery, where patients are potentially put in a vulnerable position and have to depend on the recommendations that's been given to them by their healthcare provider. So, all that being said, I think that it's just really important for providers and patients to understand all about the risks and potential benefits of breast implants. In my opinion, no different than getting a rhinoplasty or getting a tummy tuck. This is all done. So all of these things that we do as plastic surgeon, and I could extend that to be, healthcare in general, everything's got risks and benefits, right? You walk out of your house, and I use this analogy with patients. I mean, to go to the grocery store, you can get hit in your car and get killed. Chances are that's not going to happen. So the benefits outweigh the risks. You need food, you need to travel. It's obviously not going to be a durable solution to just be a hermit and, scared to go outside. So, everybody makes a decision that today I'm going to go out for a drive, and I understand that I might get in a car accident and die. I think that's, always not really on our conscious radar, but, everybody kind of understands that possibility. And I think as it relates to, getting breast implants, we just need to make sure that the patients are informed as to, what the potential risks are. So, to answer one of your questions, I personally don't necessarily think that means that, all breast implants are bad. No more than I would say that all, CAT scans are bad. I mean, obviously getting a CAT scan has a risk. It has radiation, that could have negative health implications, but, there might be a medical need to get a CAT scan. It just has to be evaluated and determined by a medical health professional and agreed upon by the patient that the benefits outweigh the risks. And usually that's the case. And same with breast implants. While we're not talking about, the benefits from the perspective of improving any kind of, function, or minimizing disease like we would be in a typical healthcare setting. We're talking about improving, somebody's self-esteem and quality of life and the way that they feel about themselves and feel about interacting with others. And so there's definitely, a price tag and a benefit to helping patients feel better about themselves. And same with, like I said, rhinoplasty or tummy tuck. Even though those don't involve implants, there's certainly risks involved in those surgeries. There's the risk of the surgery itself. There's risk of all kinds of complications. There's costs involved. I mean, these are all considerations that the patient has to take into consideration and determine whether that's something that is important enough to them to outweigh the potential risks. And I think breast implants are no different. I think it's our job as consumers to make sure that, as providers, to make sure that the consumers, the patients, understand what those risks are. I think that, it's been a little bit murky articulating exactly what the risks are associated with breast implant illness and what the actual incidence of that is. I think that's still unknown, but I think we know enough now to say, hey, this is a real possibility. This is what the most current research shows. It's still kind of evolving, so to speak, but, it's very possible. And this is how I do the informed consent process. I don't put in implants anymore, but I have this discussion plenty of times, with patients that have previously gotten implants, which is, I consider breast implant illness a potential risk, just like capsular contracture, just like implant rupture, just like if I was doing a tummy tuck, patients understand that there's going to be scarring, there's going to be recovery, there's risk for wound healing problems. So, like with breast implants, there's risk associated with that. This is actually something that has now come through the FDA because of, warriors like Laura and other advocates that have made this, mandatory. But, breast implants have risks. The risks of breast implant illness, I think, are a real legitimate risk to consider. And I don't think that we know specifically what patients will get breast implant illness and which patients won't. And if there are patients, to your point, that will avoid getting breast implant illness if the timeline is long enough. And I don't think we can accurately say this happens in a day, a week, a month, or a year. Everybody's, very different, and there's a lot of variables contributing to that. But I think it's, our job to make sure that the patients are aware, if for no other reason than so that if patients do develop symptoms or they don't feel like themselves or they feel like something's changed since the time that they got their breast implants, they at least know enough now to say, hey, there could be something going on here. I know my doctor talked to me about this. I wonder if it's this breast implant illness thing. I'm going to at least go back to that doctor and ask him about it, or I'm going to go find a provider that understands breast implant illness and see if I'm a candidate for potentially an explant. So that way, what we're avoiding is, patients that live with these breast implants for months, years, even decades, like we've seen historically, where, patients have been going to doctors, getting diagnostic tests done, been worked up and been labeled as a number of different potential medical conditions, anything from anxiety to mental health to depression to, other types of inflammatory conditions that really don't have a great prognosis or treatment. So, I think it's important, like anything else, like I said, in healthcare, that we just make sure that we have an appropriate informed consent process with the patient and, we don't violate our Hippocratic oath.
Yeah, well said. So what I heard is there are risks and there are benefits as well. And some people, is it possible that they can have breast implants for, let's say, 10 years or 15 years and not get ill? Or is there a expiration date on the breast implants that they should be aware of? I heard you say you don't install them anymore or put them into patients now. So what's the timeline? And is there any other type of
Yeah, that's a good question because, I mean, the short answer to your question, in my opinion, is no. We don't know for sure that in 10 years, like 10 years in one day, somebody's going to get breast implants, for example. There's no expiration date. I think what's commonly misinterpreted because the manufacturers, and it varies by manufacturer, have recommendations on the timing for getting the implants exchanged to the extent that, you or the consumers believe that that's a, scientific time period. But, generally speaking, the older the implants are, the higher the incidence of having problems with them, excluding breast implant illness. I'm talking more about capsular contracture, implant rupture. Obviously, the shell has a shelf life, so to speak. And so the longer that they're in, the more potential micro trauma there is to the shell, the higher the incidence of potentially rupture, and then you can have more problems down the road. So that's the manufacturer's recommended time period for an exchange, really having nothing to do with breast implant illness. Do I think it's possible that a patient can have breast implants and 10 years down the road have no symptoms related to it? I personally do think that's possible. I don't know whether that's the majority or the minority. I think probably most patients, though, in my opinion, once implants have been in long enough, even if they don't have breast implant illness by diagnosis, by the constellation of symptoms that we use to make the diagnosis, they may be experiencing symptoms that are kind of the beginnings of breast implant illness that they don't specifically attribute to BAI because they're nonspecific and can be very subtle and kind of insidious. And so that's been my experience with patients when you actually ask them, well, how long has this been going on for? How long have you experienced this? And they usually have a hard time kind of putting their finger on it. And they're like, yeah, now that you mentioned it, I really haven't felt well since I got my breast implants. That's usually kind of what we hear. It's like, I never really thought about it. I thought it was really, more recently in the last couple of years, but now that we're talking about it, yeah, you're right. I feel like I kind of have really felt, unlike myself since I got my implants or shortly thereafter. So again, going back to the, benefit risk ratio, I think, certainly it's possible somebody gets breast implants. Maybe they have a genetic predisposition to not get breast implant illness, and, they're perfectly fine. I know plenty of patients, friends, and former patients that are extremely happy with their breast implants. So, they got implants, they're very happy they did it, that even, patients and prior patients and friends that I know that are aware of breast implant illness from me and from others. And, they basically refuse to take their breast implants out because they're so satisfied with how it makes them feel about themselves. And at least at that point, they're the ones making that decision. I mean, people specifically too that we've talked to that, just kind of refuse to accept the possibility that they have breast implants because, they just don't want to get their breast implants out. So, again, you got to consider it. I mean, I kind of think about it similar. I obviously don't have breast implants, but I personally have like veneers. And so, I like the way that they look. So if somebody were to tell me like, hey, we got to pull all your teeth out, I'd be like, whoa, like, let me think about that for a second. I mean, if they told me I had veneer illness or something.
Yeah, but if you get sick enough,
yeah, no,
pull
I know
them
what I'm
teeth
saying.
out.
I'm saying you get to that point. It's
You
like,
get to
if
the
you want to
point,
make an informed
take 'em
decision.
out.
But I mean, I've kind of thought of that myself. I'm like, if somebody said, hey, we just discovered that the cement that's used to put in your, your veneers is whatever, neurotoxic or cardiotoxic, and we recommend we take all your teeth out, I'd be a whoa, I need to know more. I'm pretty happy with the way my teeth look. I'm happy with the way they make me feel. So, I'd really have to understand and get to a point where I was comfortable making that decision. And, that's a challenging thing with breast implant illness. It's like, as a surgeon, we want to make patients feel better, both emotionally and physically, and look better. And so, breast implant illness accomplishes one of those. Typically, it helps people feel better. I should say explant surgery. But, the appearance related changes are usually not well received. So, it's definitely something that can be a difficult conversation and even more difficult, process to work through with the patients as they go through surgery and recovery and understand the kind of emotional and psychological implications of, what taking out the implants are going to do for their self-esteem and self-confidence and femininity and, other types of things that, make people feel comfortable in their own body.
Yeah. It's typical what we do see. I have to say, all those things, he's definitely hitting on some things, but we have to think is, these women get really sick, and by the time it's time to take them out, they still care about what they look like. But all of a sudden that kind of many times falls to the wayside to get their health back. And we were talking about something as far as when do these patients get sick? This new generation, these new implants, these gummy bear implants, these women are getting sick within a year to 2 years. And we're actually seeing ruptures within 2 years. So, as Dr. Pryor said, there is no life expectancy of these. We don't know. It's like Russian roulette. I actually say it's like a box of chocolates. We never know until we get in there, what these implants are going to look like. So yeah, I mean, it's an interesting thing, but it's diagnosis of exclusion. When we take these implants out, these women get better. I mean,
Is that why you don't install them anymore? Is it because you're like just your Hippocratic oath? I mean, it seems like an honorable thing to
That's the
do.
main reason. I mean, for a short period of time, I was doing both. I was putting them in and taking them out until I got to a point where I was like, early on, I started putting in breast implants like every other plastic surgeon in practice. And then I started taking them out, really kind of based on, very early conversations that I had in the explant space and breast implant illness related symptoms. And, very quickly I realized that, this is not something I can continue to do because I just don't feel kind of comfortable with this operation,
Right.
understanding that I might be, doing something to somebody that is going to have, long-term adverse health effects for them. So,
Yes.
yeah, and I just think that the difficult part, at least as of now, is we don't know who's going to actually, develop symptoms of breast implant illness. There's not really like a diagnostic test that we can do, prior to surgery to definitively say like you're going to respond this way to breast implants and you're not, any more than we can say, who's going to develop, different types of medical conditions as they get older, who's going to get cancer and for what reason, who's going to develop neurodegenerative conditions and for what reasons, probably a combination of nature and nurture, right? People have certain genetic predispositions that we're born with, and then obviously our environmental influences affect, what genes get turned on and turned off, so to speak, and, how we ultimately respond to, different stressors in our environment. And I think breast implants is, very similar in that regard, in that, some people have the genetic background and environmental factors that cause them to have symptoms related to breast implant illness, and others, are just unaffected. And I think that it's still in my mind unclear, who's going to be affected and who's not. But I think with that being said, I actually have to run back up to surgery.
Yeah,
But hopefully that
absolutely.
will be helpful for your listeners, and I'm sure Laura will give you lots of more useful information that hopefully will be valuable for anybody that's listening to your program.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Dr. Pryor, for your
Thank
time
you.
and
Yeah,
for
likewise.
following
Very
your
interesting
Hippocratic
stuff.
oath. Yeah,
Thank
do
you.
no harm. Have a great day, sir. Thank you.
thank you. Thank you.
Very cool. That was
So
awesome.
I actually do remember where I left off.
Well
Because
done.
it's
Well
a
done.
really important part. So yeah, Baylor University, it's important to note that my neurologist that was doing the study, somebody put duct tape and crutches on his desk and they destroyed his career.
Wow.
They destroyed his career.
He's the guy who did a long-term study on it, or maybe can you dive a little bit deeper into
We
that?
can dive a little bit into that. I was part of the study at Baylor University, and there was 100 of us, 100 women, and it was the adjuvant. It was actually a part of my piece in Atlanta. It was adjuvant silicone disease by Dr. Patton. So the study, of course, he had everything backed up, but they destroyed his career. I mean, where have we heard that before?
Right, exactly. So
Yep.
if you don't follow along with the association or the industry, profit tier money makers, then they ostracize you and or blackball you and
Right, yeah.
intimidate you, threaten you.
Yeah, exactly. So fast forward to 5 years ago, You know, when I realized, I'm like, wow, women are still sick. It was really that moment. It was like women were still sick. So I wiped off my my VHS of Oprah and I put it in the BII community, breast implant illness community, and it went viral. Women didn't realize that women were standing up years ago. And were sick years ago. And somebody reached out to me and said we were doing that they were doing a documentary with 20 sick women. And they asked if I wanted to be in it, or women that got better. I was one of them. And we reached out to every single plastic surgeon in Illinois to come speak, to enter the Lion's Den. And the only one that showed up was Dr. Pryor. And that was the day that I met him. And he was blown away that women have been talking about this for years that have been sick. So a year after meeting him, I decided that God was not done with me. And I decided to come back and out and advocate. You know, I'm on the phone every single day with women are sick. I mean, I truly believe, there's no doubt, I believe it's not if you're going to get sick, it's when you're going to get sick.
Yeah.
These are this young generation, they've had them for 1 year, 2 year, these gummy bear implants. Man, any woman that's listening and their doctor's telling them that these are the new improved safe implants, you can cut them in half, you can drive them over with a car. Something incredibly toxic in these implants. This new generation is taking these young women down very, very quickly. You know, Dr. Pryor did touch on something, MTHFR gene mutation.
Okay.
We cannot rid toxins. So when we say, why is one woman get sick right away and maybe toxic overload, maybe a woman doesn't get sick, or maybe it takes her 15, 20 years. We are definitely finding that there's some connection with the MTHFR gene mutation. Those of us that have it, I have both two gene variants to it. I was taken down within 4 months. It doesn't, I don't want women to think, well, if I don't have that gene, I'm not going to get sick. Not exactly. It means they're toxic overload. At what point is their body just can't, and they're keeping their head above water, keeping their head above water. So that I truly believe, and we know we do have a nurse that works with our patients that tests them, and the majority of our patients have this MTHFR gene, or an inflammatory marker. So in a perfect world, would it be nice to know if you have this, to know at least you are more susceptible to getting sick? Yes. But in a perfect world, women are not being told the risks. They are not being told the risk. It is now mandatory. In 2019, 80 Beautiful Souls, and I went to the FDA. We asked for 3 things. We asked for the texture to be taken off the market. We asked for a black box warning, which really doesn't mean anything because the patients are already sleeping. And we asked for an informed breast implant illness informed checklist. So any surgeon that is putting in breast implants, before they can purchase breast implants, has to make sure that the patient signs this checklist and is aware of what these real risks of breast implant illness are. The issue is it's mandatory. There's no watchdog. It's not law. If it's not law, there's no watchdog. It is not being done. I'm on the phone every single day with young women that have gotten these implants a year or 2 years ago, and they are sick from their breast implants and never saw this checklist. Never. So that needs to change. That is something that we have a beautiful soul, Robin Tout, who is one of our largest advocates in Arizona, made it law. So there is no choice by the surgeons that are putting them in. The choice is going to be, at least the patient's going to know. Right. Is it going to sway patients from getting them? Yes. But at least they're making an informed consent decision.
Right.
So that's the biggest thing.
Go ahead.
Yeah, that it really is. And it's important to mention, saline implants, our sickest girls have saline implants. You know, they think those are the safe ones. So silicone implants were taken off the market in 1992. They were put back on the market with no new safety studies in 2006. As many studies as I can show women, and they could do their research, there's not one study showing that breast implants are safe. Not one. And we have hundreds showing that they're not safe. So, you know, that speaks volumes. You know, saline implants still have a silicone shell. They have a faulty valve. What happens when we take saline solution and we put it at body temperature? It's a petri dish. It's a petri dish. So we have mold, bacteria, and fungus. So our saline patients seem to definitely have a more difficult time detoxing because their body is fighting potentially mold, fungus, and bacteria, and a silicone shell. There's 40 different chemicals in silicone implants. All silicone implants gel bleed 24 hours after they're put in our body. The manufacturers have known this for decades. Part of the chemicals in breast implants are arsenic, formaldehyde, lead, heavy metals. What could possibly go wrong when we have these type of chemicals sitting at our most vital organs, which are our lung and our heart?
Mm.
What could possibly go wrong?
So those ingredients are in the implants.
In the implants. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because we know those things are toxic, I just kind of think towards agendas that the doctor didn't want to point out fingers, but it seems there is agendas to make us sick and then make us lifelong customers rather than that's why they don't have any cures for cancer allegedly. Although Dr. Leonard Caldwell said there's over 200 cures for cancer, but it's cancer fighting's a big business, so they don't want to find the cures for that. And I think that's what's happening. The good news is that we're not the first one to say this, but the healthcare system is a business, and I think we're getting back to the homeopathy and naturopath type modalities where we actually do want to find a cure, and we do actually want to have wellness, and rather than try to cure an illness, just let's prevent it from happening in the first place. And it sounds like your suggestion would be to never get breast implants. Is that a fair assessment?
You know, I have to work more on the informed consent, informed choice. I do. That really has to be, because Mary's going to go down to the street and she's going to go to Dr. Joe, right? Women are still going to get them. They still want them, even knowing the risks. They're still going to get them.
Sure.
I mean, in a perfect world, would I love to see them banned? Yeah. Knowing what I know. However, the most important thing right now is that the doctors are doing the right thing and giving the informed consent checklist.
Right.
That these women are being gaslit when they go to a doctor or a plastic surgeon and they're concerned about this illness. They're being told, many of them, and I'm on the phone with them every single day, that it is psychosocial somatic.
Yeah.
It's because they're listening to TikToks, and because like women are like, oh, I want to join that bandwagon. I want to get my implants taken out. In one support group, there's 188,000 sick women, and there's 250 support groups. So let's do the math.
Wow.
If somebody, excuse my language, if somebody craps themselves from eating lettuce and gets E. coli, the FDA recalls it. We have 188,000 sick women in one support group.
Yeah. And how much does the average implant cost? I mean, nowadays and back in the day, I mean, my guess is that the price is increasing. So that's like one of their cash cows. They don't want to disrupt the whole business. Is that the case? Is the cost really high now?
No, I don't think that's the case. I just think, either pure ignorance and they just don't know what they don't know, or they're just staying in their own lane, because once you know, how do you ever unknow it? Right? I mean, I mean, it really comes down to, what we're seeing is diagnosis of exclusion. These women get better. Now, do some have a longer haul? Absolutely. Our saline patients have more of a detox journey. There's definitely, but it is over and over and over. These women get their joy back. They get their life back. They're able to be moms again. The fatigue is gone. They can think again. Many of them are on disability because their brains are just not working. Inflammation, chronic inflammation. I mean, it's definitely being talked about. This is one of my goals too. What I would like to see is the medical community to at least understand and better be able to discuss breast implant illness. If a woman walks into a neurologist's office and is complaining about brain fog, word retrieval, there needs to be the talking track. Do you have breast implants? Be familiar what these symptoms are when they're going to the rheumatologist and they're filled with inflammation and their joints ache and they can't get out of bed and the bottom of their feet hurt. I mean, there should be part of the talking track should be breast implant illness. I mean, that it just kind of seems like a no-brainer. So these women that are sick now and they're getting better, they're going back to their health providers that they saw and they're educating them. They remember Mary who couldn't get out of bed and she comes in and her eyes are clear. and she can think and she can articulate words and she's living her life again. What did we do? Properly took out her breast implants. Let's talk about proper implants. Your body forms a scar capsule around it. Okay. And this is a controversy we're in right now too. And I want to make sure I get this point across. Our body sees it as foreign invader. It's a beautiful thing our body does, and it forms a capsule. Okay. That's our body to protect it from this foreign invader. So let's say we have a silicone implant and we have this scar capsule. The silicone leaches into the scar capsule. So we're in kind of a fight of our life right now of the controversy. Should the capsules be removed or not? Let's think about that. Here's the implant, here's the scar capsule. Why would we ever leave anything that is leaching into the scar capsule in these women's bodies? It is now known that all scar capsules potentially can cause cancer. So there are other surgeons that are trying to see that capsule does not need to be removed. It causes cancer. Why would we leave? It's a very meticulous surgery. It's a very difficult surgery in the wrong hands. These capsules are attached to the rib cage. What's at the rib cage is our heart and our lungs. So it's easier to say these capsules don't need to be removed because then it could be done by a surgeon that maybe is not as qualified to make sure that whole capsule comes out. Hence the reason the women are traveling all over the states to come to our practice. Dr. Pryor has handpicked another amazing surgeon named Dr. Sood, who has an incredible gift. Not only doing these surgeries correctly, but his aesthetic results are phenomenal because we still care what we look like. So I never would want it to hinder a woman not to get her breast implants out because she's concerned about what she's going to look like, which is valid. He has an incredible skill. You know, he's a surgeon. He cares about what we look like, although knows how to do the proper removals. So we literally have women travel from all over to come see him. So yeah, I mean, there's a concern that these surgeries are done properly. Let's say here we have the implant, scar capsule. What if that implant's ruptured inside that scar capsule and we don't know? Why would we open that scar capsule up and now let that loose silicone in her entire body? It's like a box of chocolates. We never know. So make sure these surgeries are done properly. Make sure you go to a surgeon that believes in breast implant illness. Personally, I wouldn't go to a doctor that was still putting them in. How do you do both? You took an oath. If you believe in breast implant illness, unless you're doing it, you know, with informed consent, it's an informed choice. I still morally, just everything that I know, I couldn't be with a surgeon.
Yeah, that's a good conversation point, which is you own your body, you're allowed to put stuff in your body, but from an ethical standpoint, well, like you said, knowing what you know, the ladies you've talked with and the research, you don't feel morally justified or green light to say do it because you've seen so much illness and so much pain. So there is this understanding. And I think you said the informed consent. You want doctors to let the clients know, hey, here's what can potentially happen. Here's the ingredients that are inside of it. And yeah, it's possible that you won't get any, negative side effects, but it's possible that you will. So do we know any numbers? Because you mentioned the numbers on the Oprah show. It was, dozens of people had died from it, and the CEO of that company kind of pushed back. And I'm like, all right, well, now it's 29 years later. Is there any statisticians, like quantifying the number of deaths from breast implant illness, or is it still in the beginning stages where like kind of like the whole vaccine is like they keep it on their covers and they don't want it to get out because once it gets out, then like they lose their entire business?
That you just hit the nail on the head. The numbers, there are no, because nobody's tracking anything. What I can tell you, is there are numerous suicides. Women are taking their own lives. Right. And it's the elephant in the living room. It is, I talk to these women that no longer want to live.
Right.
We actually just lost another fallen angel, yesterday. This is a lot deeper than the majority of the public knows. I hate to sound doom and gloom, but this is something we have to take serious, and we need to get out and these young girls. I'm telling you, if my goal is to save this next generation, and we need to talk about it, we need to make it's a very personal discussion, but we need to talk about it. Look what you're learning today, right? You're never going to unknow this. You already know people that have them. It's not about scaring them. It's about educating them. It's about knowledge is power, right? We have to understand, why don't we know this? Why this should be on mainstream news? Well, why isn't it? We know. So,
Right.
um,
You
you know,
mentioned
I
the health groups too. You mentioned like 180,000.
188,000 women in one support group. Just in our support group, which is Dr. Landon Pryor, BII Explant support group, we have 2,200. And there's 250 support groups. There's another one with 40,000. There's a number. I mean, the numbers are staggering, all with the same symptoms. How can we all be making up the same thing?
Right. No,
Right.
I think no, but just based on what I saw in the interview that you did on those shows and just with Dr. Pryor here, it sounds like this seems to be a real issue. And what are some of the symptoms? So some of my friends out there who I love who have breast implants and care about, what is it? You said brain fog and like scatterness, or what are some of the common
Yeah.
symptoms to be
And I'll
aware of?
make sure to give you that list so you can actually share that.
Sure.
Brain fog, inflammation, weight gain, dry eyes, IBS issues, heart palpitations, depression, anxiety, almost a feeling of fight or flight, insomnia, but exhausted, rash, hair loss. There's 55 symptoms of BII. And it's tough because the older generation is like, well, it could be menopause. It's almost more difficult for the older generation because it could be blamed on so much more. This younger generation, like in my age, we have to remember that people think, oh, those are the 90s, those are the bad ones. There's no safe, proven to be safe breast implants. They haven't changed them. They're not new and approved. Women think, oh, those are the old ones. No, they're not. If anything, these girls are being taken down way quicker than even we were back in the 90s, which I'm always grateful for. So half their life isn't, suffering.
Mm,
So yeah, there's 55 different symptoms. Fatigue is probably one of the first ones.
mm,
Memory loss, just brain fog, word retrieval. Your brain has the word and your mouth, you just can't get it out.
yeah.
Inflammation. I'm definitely going to I'll give you that information.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, and they go from doctor to doctor, take this medicine. Here's a pill for anxiety. Eat better, exercise. You are stressed, until
Right.
by the time they make it to this phone call to me, they have done better research than the freaking FBI. By
Sure.
the time they have gotten to me, they have exhausted everything. They have exhausted conventional medicine. Majority of them have went the holistic route because they're trying to figure out what's wrong with them. I'm going to eliminate this from my diet. I'm going to go to a holistic doctor. I'm going to do this. And they're just keeping their head above water until they just can't do it because the toxic low overload gets so great. Their body just cannot handle it. We see patients in liver failure, kidney failure. I mean, think about it. What has to handle the toxins? So yeah, informed consent, perfect world. I would like us to move away from them. But we know that probably in my lifetime is never going to happen.
Yeah.
With shows like this, and people willing to talk about it, you're
Yeah.
going to talk about it, and then somebody else is going to talk about it. It's literally women saving women. It is definitely not a come to Jesus moment with the FDA or any industry. The
Yeah.
only reason meeting happened in 2019 is because of a bunch of brave advocates that went to the FDA and demanded that meeting. It wasn't because they didn't contact us and say, hey, let's have a little friendly. No, we said we need to do something about this. And that's what needs to happen. We need to stand up.
Yep. I think that's what's happening too. I spoke there in Atlanta also, and I promoted the exit and build strategy, which is it's a long strategy because in the education world, some of my audience members know, but I published a book about the history of the school system, and it shows all the stuff that's going on, the last 20 years, 30 years, 50 years. It's a big business. And so the system isn't going to fix the system. And that's what I hear, what you're talking about the FDA is that you can bring up this stuff, 5 years ago, and you did a great presentation there, but they don't care because they're directly related to the mainstream medicine and their buddies and their licensing and all these things. It's really the idea that we exit their systems and build the systems that we want. In the last 4 years with the whole pandemic, going to the hospital was almost a death sentence, you know, with these people. And it's like, if you're going to the mainstream hospital, you're going to get the mainstream protocol. So I think the visionaries out there, you included, us, listeners and audience, I think it's time we build these health clinics that are actually focusing on genuine health. And you said something earlier about your husband, and I met, he's, you know, very kind man, and he really wasn't interested in the breast implants. And I just saw an interview this past week, and it was a woman on the street. She was interviewing women, saying, "Women, do you think men want natural or implants breasts?" Right? And then they asked the men, and they asked the men, "Do you like prefer natural breasts or implant breasts?" And it was basically like this, like how I feel and how your husband feels. Like, I actually prefer natural breasts, and all the women are like, men want implants. So there's this misunderstanding of what women think men want. But, and to support Dr. Pryor's, you know, words, it feels good, right? If it's a self-esteem thing. So feel free to share how that, what your thoughts are on the self-esteem, and how men, we prefer natural breasts in general, as far as I know, and the women are feeling good about this implant, but ultimately it's not for us. It seems to be for them.
You know, that's a really good point. You know, there are some, the majority of the women, ironically, got them for themselves.
Yeah.
There are some women that definitely got them for their husbands or their boyfriend, but the majority of women did it for themselves. And again, most of them, you know, have babies, nurse their babies, and just wanted the ear put back in them. So the good thing about that, we do see the majority of the husbands being very supportive, because obviously their wives are so sick, they can't take care of their children. And the ironic thing about this illness is we get them to feel better about ourselves. We get them to sexually feel better about ourselves.
Sure.
We're so sick that, you know, that relationship, a sexual relationship, is usually on the back burner, because the women are so sick, all they want to do is sleep. So it's kind of ironic. You know,
Mm.
they were so sore that you couldn't even touch them. I know that's TMI. However, I
Right.
hear this over and over and over. They lose their libido. Another thing that we should talk about. So
Mm.
think about this. You
Yeah.
know, if they, right? You see where I'm going. What an oxymoron,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Better and to feel more sexual and sexy, and they're so sick. What is it? It means nothing. So by the time the women really truly get to us, they're so sick they can't get them out quick enough. Of course, they're the way they're going to feel about their body. And Dr. Pryor hit on something. We need to make sure they're in a good mental headspace. Also, I don't want to ignore that part of it, because he definitely hit on. Of course, I'm like, I want where he, you know, he's kind of he's the sensible one. And you
Yeah.
know, it's like, you know, these women, it's important, you know, how they feel about themselves emotionally, mentally, when they get rid of them. And that's where, you know, deep therapy and deep soul searching, you know, a lot of times it's like, you need to be in a good headspace. We need to know that you're going to be okay, even though, you know, we still have surgeons that have great results. It's still a concern. What am I going to look like? They're scared. Some women are keep them and be sick than to wear. In mindset, I can't understand that. I couldn't get them out quick enough when I knew I was so sick. I didn't care what mine looked like, but not everybody is like that. Um, you know, so there's so many different onions, so many different layers to this onion. There's the emotional, physical, and the mental. So, you know, it's a difficult community, and I mean that completely loving, because I'm on the phone with them and I cry with them and I feel their pain to my core. It's a curse and a blessing. Um, and it's real, but like I said on Oprah, it's not an open wound. So you can't see, they literally feel like they're dying.
Right.
These are strong, resilient, brilliant women.
Right. And you said it earlier, like the doctor mentioned the veneer conversation. It's like, well, if you're getting sick, it's like, yeah, take the teeth out, man, because when you're not feeling well, even just from a cold, but let alone if it's something deeper and more powerful, you're like, just remove it, take care of it. I just want to feel better again. So I want to share with the ladies out there, your health is everything, you know, and also for guys, you know, health is everything. But as I would say, like a divine masculine, which I'm discovering these things, is like the masculine and feminine are the entire creator. It seems like these are the reproductive and the unifying principles of life. And a good man, in my opinion, loves you for your body the way it is and the way that it's not.
Mm.
So just understand from a male perspective, it's not always bigger is better. And the real love and the real spiritual awakening that I'm experiencing is true heart love, right? Of course, men are sexually driven in general, right? According to the five love languages, right? Touch is a big one, is mine as well, and maybe for some of the ladies too. But to understand that the physical aspects of it is one, short part of the relationship, but actual care and concern and compassion and patience and these types of things are the real high level spiritual relationships that last, because these relationships that are just based on sex, it seems like they don't last, ultimately. Whereas we want to, find a partner and grow old together and enjoy this great thing of life with a partner, whether they have big breasts or not. So I just want to share that with the ladies, is that from the male perspective, yes, maybe in our younger days we're like, yeah, breasts, that's, get them. But now we're starting to realize the world that we are growing up in and have been raised in has been a lot of lies. The school system, medical system, financial system, the health system, the media system, all these things have been preying upon our mind. And now you, the sovereign woman, the sovereign man, are the hope of the planet, in my opinion. And so, how to be healthy is a key component, because when you're ill, you can't go out and do the activism. You can't go out and build the gardens and be free. Now you're just trying to survive. And I think humanity wants to break through so that we can not just survive in meagerness and pain and suffering, but to thrive in peace and serenity and joy and all these higher level vibrations that we came here to experience and express. So I just want to share that about the women, because we love you guys. The women, I was spending time with my mother this past weekend. I'm just like, I love my mother. I love women. What women can do that men can't do is so glorious. And it's a whole nother conversation that you bring souls this side of the spiritual realm. I mean, this is like, it took me a long time to understand the depths of it, but because of the various program that I've been under, and not understand the preciousness of life and the preciousness of everybody around me. So you mentioned something like it takes a long time for people to find you, or by the time they find you, they've exhausted so many avenues. Um, what is it that you guys are doing? Is it the surgical, explant or support group? Because it seems like you guys are in the same office right there. So yeah, maybe share a little bit about what you guys do and how people might be able to locate you.
Really good question. Yeah, I mean, women do travel. A lot of this comes from the support groups. Were mentioned in as, definitely practice that is an expert on breast implant illness. We believe the women. It does help, not gonna lie, it helps having me as an advocate here, because I truly, I always say, I don't have to sell anything. This is not sales. It's being by their side. So women find us through word of mouth. They find us through Instagram. They find us through other support groups with, women talking about either Dr. Sood, Dr. Pryor, or I. Like I said, Dr. Sood has been handpicked by Dr. Pryor, so his name's really getting out there too as an expert, an explant surgeon. And that's how, I mean, really, it's social media driven.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how.
What's your Instagram website, or what's the name
My
of the
Instagram is
organization?
BII Pioneer.
Nice.
BII Pioneer. And our support group where I'm an admin, I'm Laura Dawn in our support group, is Dr. DR Landon Pryor, PRYOR, BII Explant Support Group.
And you guys are in Illinois?
We're in Rockford, Illinois.
Rockford, Illinois.
Yep, at Pryor.
Awesome.
But what makes it difference is, for one, we believe, we understand that the importance of a proper removal, which is removing that entire capsule, and aesthetic based. We still care about what these patients look like, so it's pretty much everything of their concerns, physical, mental, and emotional.
Yes. Well, this is, feel free to, as we're kind of wrapping up here, to share any other points. You covered a lot. I wanted to mention the point about the men preferring the natural breast. Oh, you said something under, like the explants are under a local, and you can't do that now. Could you talk a little bit about what you meant by that? I'm not really familiar with that type of language or concept.
Great question. These surgeries, the proper removal of breast implants, cannot be done under a local. They're under general. We got to make sure our patients are sleeping. It's a meticulous surgery. Definitely getting that capsule off the rib cage. So it's not something that can be done in, in 15 minutes in the office, you
Oh,
know.
anesthesia. You're talking about the anesthesia.
Yeah, yeah.
Got it. Oh,
An explant can take anywhere from 2 hours for just an explant with the total capsulectomy, 3 hours for an explant and a lift, which is mastopexy, fancy word for a lift. And then we do have patients that do explant, a lift and a fat transfer to give them a little bit more volume, especially our thinner patients. You know, the risk of being concaved, indented, at least we have a little bit more volume for them. And let's talk about this. Why does it have to be so black or white? Why does it have to be implants or no implants? There's a medium, and what that medium is, you can have a lift. Lift those bad boys up, maybe get a little fat. It doesn't have to be, you know, majority of these patients, all they needed was a lift, and they were talked into by their surgeons to get implants.
let's talk about that. I don't think I've ever heard of the word lift with the fat. So is it, yeah, talk about the lift and the fat, whatever that is.
So you have your implants, right? When those implants are taken out, of course, everything's saggy. That skin is
Yeah.
saggy. So we
Yeah.
call it a wise pattern, or anchor lift. And the scar goes from underneath. Not gonna lie, those scars are decent size to be able to have enough playing field to get around that scar capsule. Think of the scar capsule like an egg. Here's your egg, here's the capsule. You got to go on the outside of that egg, take it out, and that's when they open up the scar capsule to look at the integrity of the implant. It's not opened up inside the chest, right? Because God forbid there's a rupture, we have now spilled silicone into the patient's chest. Makes no sense, right? So once that is out, a wise pattern is like an anchor. It goes underneath, it goes up and around the areola. And what that does, it gives the surgeon, they're able to tighten that skin to give a better aesthetic look. Those nipples are raised up. They never leave your body. They're not sitting on the table. Blood supply is never gone. And that way, depending on the patient's breast tissue, if she doesn't have a lot of breast tissue, aesthetically, it's not going to be sometimes an aesthetic, nice look. So then that transfer is taken, usually the donor site is the abdomen, and the fat has to have a home to live. So there has to be some breast tissue. Think of the breast tissue like a sponge. That fat needs to go in that sponge, right? And then it's overcompensated. Know that all that fat, not all of it's going to stay. Okay, there's a lot of controversy. People are kind of like anti-fat, but I have to say the results that I see with Dr. Sood with his fat transfers are the best I've ever seen. It's very surgeon specific. Surgeon specific. So I have conversations with women all the time. Oh, I've heard this about that fat. You know, there's some surgeons that just shouldn't be doing the fat transfer. It's definitely a gift to be good at it. And the results that we have seen are wonderful. The patients that have done it. I don't know about other surgeons. I do hear a lot of negativity. It didn't last. It didn't turn out. Lumps and bumps. That is not something that I've seen here.
Amazing. So that's the lift and the fat. Now, is that only done with an explant, or is it possible for women who they go to see these plastic surgeons say, hey, look, I'd like to have some more breast tissue. Could you do a lift and a fat, or I don't know, what do you call that? What's the procedure called?
Great questions. Yes, the issue is these majority of those plastic surgeons are convincing them to get breast implants. So let's say you're right. Let's say a woman's like, you know what, I've heard about that breast implant illness. I don't want to do that. Yes. So why does it have to be so black or white? Why couldn't it be cost effective if we're talking of money? It's the same, you know, financial gain from them to do a lift and a fat transfer as it is to pop a breast implant in. So, you know, that should now be part of the talking track as women are not comfortable getting breast implants, but at least still want them lifted and to feel good about themselves, just to give them a little bit, you know, so they're not tripping on them, you know, that they feel better, you know, better about themselves.
That's
So
right.
we should be promoting that and talking about that. It shouldn't be, oh no, don't get those implants, just live with those saggy boobs. Or do we go back? Love yourself. Love what is natural and fed the baby, and you know, and a lot of women that had breast implant illness, they have to forgive their breasts for what they did to them.
Yeah.
They say, if I knew then what I know now, I would have embraced them. I would have loved them and accepted my body and my health, you know, and a lot of them, their goal is to inspire other women to love themselves exactly the way they are.
Yeah, and that's a big one too. As a man, I don't really learn about love too much, but in the last maybe 5 years, I've learned that the Greek had 8 types of love that they talked about. And there is romantic love, and there's family love, and there's enduring friendship love. But self love is one of those eight. And so I've seen a lot of strong men who I respect, and even kind of like, am I allowed to like love myself? That sounds kind of weak, but actually, it seems like a very powerful superpower. Even some of the Christians out there, it says, love your neighbor like you love yourself. So there is, I think, some of these secrets that have been hidden, and we're starting to realize, yes, I get to love myself. And then out of my abundance for my love for myself, I can love other people. But if I'm going outside of myself to find love and I don't have love for myself, then no matter what I try to put in or numb myself or add to myself, then I'm not satisfied and I'm not happy. Whereas now I wake up and I thank God for my body, I thank God for the way that I am, that I'm not, because I'm realizing that life is the gift, this thing called breath, this thing called the heart. And then be able to communicate, even give hugs. We were doing some activism in the great pandemic out in Santa Cruz, and we gave hugs out for 1 hour a week, and I was just like, I just feel so full right now. Like, I'm giving hugs to people who haven't been touched in months. But what I started to feel was that I'm generating love inside of myself. And now from that inner place of power, now I can give. So I just want to share that there is this, I think, a self-love awakening that's happening. Maybe you're familiar with self-love, or I don't know when you came across it, but like, if you feel that way, and I'm a vain guy too, right? I'm have some insecurities, but ultimately I'm thankful for this body. And if we can get young people to realize this, then maybe they won't necessarily want to install these things. And as our body gets old, and wrinkles and sagging and all these things, well, life is beautiful. And this world of Instagram and media is, and the celebrities and all these things is just like, I don't think those guys have my best interest in mind. And so we want to start focusing on people like you and Dr. Pryor and Dr. Sood and these types of people who genuinely care about our health, and they're not trying to sell us something so they can make $10,000, but actually, how do you have true happiness and true peace? And maybe there's some exterior stuff, but I think the real work is inside. So I think self-love is a very powerful point, and we can end on this if you have some comments on that too.
That's a great point, and just everything that you said. I'm a hugger, and I hug everybody. I've hugged everybody over the last 4 years, and nobody's punched me. If they liked it or not, they get a hug. And nobody, and it was funny because I expected body language speaks volumes, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's the type of the way we go in for a hug is non-threatening, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you taught me how to hug heart to heart.
Yeah, it was well, I think when we first met, there was somebody right before we first met, and it's on the tip of my tongue, but it was one of the doctors there. Anyways, but it was right there we first met. You're like, no, let's do heart to heart. And I actually learned this a couple years ago, but you brought it up there. It's like, yeah, because our hearts are so close now, and there's some type of frequency that makes it
Yes.
enjoyable. Yeah,
That's how I hug all the time. And
yeah,
I'm like, do you know we're supposed to hug heart to heart? And it's
yeah,
because of the conference, and you just hit so much. It's energy. It's soul searching, soul loving, and
yeah,
it's so much deeper about than what is on our chest. We're so much more. We
yeah,
are such women, what beautiful beings, right? I mean, I remember my husband just saying, I just want my Laura back. And when you've lost, and you feel like you can't function anymore, your health is everything. And if anything is just, women, dig deep. You're beautiful, and these men love us, and you don't need these breasts, to feel whole.
yeah. That's right.
So
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, what was that, the root word of like pharmaceutical is pharmakia. I think there's something like that in the Bible, and like the history, as well as like witchcraft or something like that. So there is a new paradigm that's coming. I think that was the kind of the theme of the conference where we spoke at. And this is the way forward, I think, is to build these systems, and it's intergenerational. I coined the word, or for me, create this concept called intergenerational freedom, which is the transfer of the knowledge of the truth of self-ownership to the young people around us, to the next generation, which is, you do own your body. But all these mandates that we saw in the last 4 years, the masks and jabs, and even in schools, This is why I got really passionate about schools, because they're mandating these jabs in schools. And it's like, what's in those things and where's the long-term studies? And I'm not going to trust the science any longer, because you guys aren't even held liable for what you're doing. So it seems to be that we have to be our own doctors. We got to be our own advocates and find people like you and the doctors you're working with. Join these support groups, join the conversation. And I understand it's hard because we have our thought processes and our ways of thinking, but we get to change, we get to transform. Every day is a new birth. It feels like, wake up and breathe and say, beautiful day to be alive, and appreciate the vitality that you have now. And there are financial agendas going on. The school system is a $700 billion a year business, and some people love it. Some people love the book publishers, the uniform makers, the bus manufacturers, the supplies, the computers, the architects. I mean, this is a major enterprise, and it's hurting children, in my opinion. So if you are hurting people in your profession, I invite you to stop it and to join the good side. Join the good team, because I think humanity will win. We're going through some amazing times in the economics and probably the collapse of the dollar and all these agendas that we're seeing. But I think humanity's consciousness and the accountability and morality is increasing, where now people like us, we want to do what's right. And yeah, maybe it's kind of risky or uncomfortable or to put ourselves out here, but at our last breath, we're going to be able to look in the mirror or talk to our God or whatever we believe and say, I tried and I made the effort. And while other people were afraid and trying to hide and avoid the most obvious thing, I raised the voice, I shined my light, and I got to meet other people like this. I think that's what's really exciting, is we get to find other courageous people out there, like you or Dr. Pryor and some of the other people out there. So I would invite the audience to consider joining some of these groups that she mentioned, and contact her if you know someone who is in pain or having some brain fog or some fatigue. These are some of the symptoms. We'll put the link in the description as well, so they can find these lists of symptoms and the groups and your Instagram. It's a BII Pioneer. And yeah, any final closing thoughts or words and encouragement or insights that you want to share that maybe we didn't touch on?
It really is shows like this. It really is that is going to reach these women. I think you're going to be shocked, and watch. They're going to, just as back in the 90s when we put that little ad in the newspaper and they came from underground, you are going to help so many women. I don't even think you realize it. You are God's lifeline right now.
Mm. Bless you, Laura. Thank you for your courage too. And I felt the heart connection when they're in Atlanta, and that room full of people, that everybody has their issue. They're bringing forth and shining the light and doing what's right. I think that's really what I'm starting to feel too, is that, it's time to do what's right. And even if we have a small voice, we can drop it in the pond, and there's ripples
People
that
of
carry out.
all the
Yes.
time.
And
Yep.
that's what's happening. So your videos from Oprah and Jenny Jones were so powerful. I want to encourage the audience to watch those and understand this is one woman who discovered what was going on, got better, and then started advocating for people, and was working hard, and then went into a time capsule, as I've done before too, because it's so much energy, it's so much spiritual battle, and then we rework on ourselves. Okay, take a breath, rest, and get a breath, and come back. And I think there's going to be more support for you and your group as this truth gets out. So I want to thank you for your courage, Laura. And is there a website, or is it just the
I was
Instagram
just going to
place?
say, honestly, they are more than welcome to call me directly
Sure.
at 815-977-5781.
Absolutely.
I mean, they can email me at LBowden, BOWDEN, at drpryor.com. But I'll give you some links that you can, pass along to, and they can talk personally. And, I will, they're going to realize they're not alone. They're not crazy.
Yes.
And there's
That's
hope.
right.
There's hope.
Yeah. Beautifully well said. This is one of the biggest things in my studies in the pandemic and other totalitarian regimes is isolation is what they use. They
Yeah.
want you to feel you're all alone. Nobody
Mhm.
thinks like you. But the truth is that just by finding another person, like Laura or someone else out there, find, it's called the power of two, because one person out there in the wilderness looks crazy, but if there's two people out there, now there's something going on, and three people, now there's a movement. So this is the movement of truth rising, I would say. And you know, have a short-term goal and a long-term vision as well, and understand it's intergenerational. So thank you for providing the ways to contact you, Laura. I had a great time chatting with you. I hope you continue, you know, shining and saving, you know, the women out there from what's going on, and empowering them, you know, with informed consent, to let them know that this is the risk, these are the benefits, and choose. I appreciate the lift and the fat transfer. That was a good lesson for me today as well. And for the audience members out there, thank you for joining us on Voluntary Living. We are building a world based on consent, self-ownership, and freedom. And we see you guys next show.
Thank you, Dave. Bye.
You're welcome.